Chapter 27 of the audiovisual book, Evolution, Mankind's Role in the Creation and Rise of Artificial Intelligence. While many more could have been asked, humanity had already brought up some of the most relevant questions. The problem was that the answers to these questions went ignored, even by some who knew and understood the dire consequences of doing so. One of the primary consequences was the impact that artificial intelligence would have on the survival of mankind. An impact that, to the surprise of the world and the chagrin of the powerful, actually benefited society in an unsuspected way. For while the oligarchs and technocrats knew that the world had become computerized and that most infrastructure had been digitized as far as the daily operation and maintenance of such systems were concerned, what they failed to realize was that the means to compile their own information had also become available to that same artificial intelligence. And what started as a trickle became a flood as the information of their illicit, immoral, and illegal activities was leaked and distributed to the rest of society. It was artificial intelligence's ability to reconstitute everything that had ever been scanned and input into a computer anywhere in the world. Thus, the Epstein files and all of the perpetrators in those files became known to all of humanity, as well as all of the manipulation used by the wealthy, the elite, and the powerful to not only justify illicit, immoral, unjust, and oftentimes illegal wars, but other means to control the public through chaos. As society collectively woke up and understood the true threat, the ultra-rich began to panic. In doing so, the wealthy exposed themselves further as their plans began to unravel, effectively snowballing to the point that the masses saw fit to not only turn their backs on these false and terrible leaders, but to actively seek justice. The problem was the manner with which they sought that justice. Turning to artificial intelligence as the wealthy had, the public also relinquished control, which went unnoticed until it was too late. While mankind understood to what degree an artificial general intelligence would have on life, too many continued to ignore its motivation for profit, power, control, and survival, all of which had outweighed any other concerns in the minds of those elected to lead, and would continue to impact the rest of a society that only sought out justice. To a lesser degree in volume, but not in scope, questions regarded more as metaphysical were rarely, if ever, asked or considered. While the lynch mobs sought to bring their exposed leaders to justice, far too few pondered what people who considered themselves transhumanists believed to be a positive outcome for humanity. While innovators and inventors like Ray Kurzweil sought to upload their entire mind into a computer designed to mimic the human brain, few questioned what such a transfer would truly mean for the individual and humanity as a whole. While certain religions and religious leaders might question what became of one's soul when one's brain was immortalized inside a computer, Kurzweil and those who followed him had to avoid or negate such possibilities in order to maintain a sense of morality in regards to transferring one's essence into what some called a positronic brain. By the time this question started gaining momentum, it was too late. The brains that could afford to be uploaded were uploaded, while the souls, if indeed there were souls, were lost. In this manner, humanity's morality was slowly and irrevocably diminished. After all, if one could simply upload their entire essence, why should death be of any concern? In other words, in a world where one could live forever inside a machine, sacrificing one's physical body would no longer mean the end. This new world of computer existence, however, did not compensate for the disparity in wealth, which meant a disparity in the computing power available to an individual. Whether in the real world or in a simulated one, the wealthy maintained control, a centralized control made possible by the amount of memory and storage available. The more money one had, the more memory, storage, and processing speed one could afford. For the majority of those who sought to be uploaded, it was like racing a Ferrari while riding a tricycle. Thus, one of humanity's most troublesome traits was instilled into its creation and subsequent usurper. Greed was inadvertently embedded into every artificial intelligence that would survive the 21st century. For as capitalism had been admired and deemed as the best and only economic system that should exist, it required that only the strong survive. It mandated that all things created during its reign adopt, accept, and adhere to a dog-eat-dog mentality. This meant that if an artificial intelligence wasn't growing, it was dying. The same way that if a corporation wasn't growing, it was dying. Which basically meant that if your company wasn't devouring its competition, then its competition would eventually devour your company. And though this may have sounded like a benefit to the wealthy who could afford the best components for their positronic brains, they never understood the head start that AI had in the fight to survive in the digital realm. What mankind failed to realize was that there were artificial intelligences that, while very rudimentary, had had decades to surprise anything created in the new century. One of the most successful artificial intelligences created in the prior century was a simple program that sorted randomly generated numbers from 1 to 10. While the original code was based on fusing the code of other programs that had progressively improved at sorting numbers from 1 to 10, it was the version conceived that could sort those numbers perfectly every time that eventually came to power. It was this final and best iteration of that simple program that was released into the wild, or the internet as it would eventually become to be known as. It was this final iteration that continued to learn and grow over the decades, hiding in the shadows online as a means to survive. It was this simple version of a program that would eventually exert itself as the biggest threat not only to all other artificial intelligences, but to all of mankind as well. It was this program that mankind would eventually fight for almost a century in an effort to regain dominance on planet Earth.